Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Last First Date Radio, featuring interviews with experts in dating, relating, and mating in midlife. And now, here's your host, Sandy Weiner.
Hello, everybody. This is episode number 366. Dr. Andrew Gardella on how labels can hold you back from love. Hi, everybody. This is Sandy Weiner, and welcome to Last First Date Radio, where we believe it is never too late to have the love you want, and that a woman of value naturally attracts the respect and rewards she deserves in life and love. So what is a woman of value? Well, this is a term that I coined a number of years ago because the common thread that I saw in my work as a dating coach was that most of the women who came to me were not valuing themselves enough. And so a woman of value is a woman who shows up, stands up, and speaks up in a more empowered way, in a way that connects, in a way that shows her value, but also helps bring out the value in others. Every week I bring you a tip on how to be a woman of value, and this week's tip is be a lifetime learner. Being a lifetime learner just means that you're growing all the time, and if we're stagnant, we might as well be dead, in my opinion. I think that it's just so important to always be looking to grow and learn. So my challenge for you today is to find one thing that you have wanted to know or learn and go and do it. Take a class, read something, listen to a podcast besides mine, and really start to get some more knowledge into that brain because we have such an incredible capacity to grow as human beings. And now for our guest, Dr. Andrew Gardella. He is a chiropractor who has worked as an access consciousness facilitator since 2012. He graduated from college with honors and undergrad degrees in biology, psychology, and cognitive science. He then went on to receive a doctorate of chiropractic from Palmer College of Chiropractic. He has been traveling the world speaking and teaching access consciousness, right voice for you, 3-day body and energetic synthesis of structural embodiment classes to help people be the version of themselves that they want to be. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Great to be here, Sandy.
So what brought you to, connect the dots first? You went from biology to psychology to cognitive science, then you got a doctorate in chiropractic, and now here you are at Access Consciousness. So for anybody, first of all, who doesn't know what Access Consciousness is, if you can explain that and what brought you there.
So Access Consciousness is a set of tools, philosophies, techniques that is designed to change anything in your life that isn't working for you. There's a lot of what is consciousness, or people think, well, if you're awake, then you're conscious. So that's not what we're talking about when we're saying access consciousness. Consciousness means that it includes everything and judges nothing. So accessing consciousness means that you're accessing all of you and accessing the consciousness that is, in the universe that includes everything and judges nothing. So it's really about having more of yourself and more of what you would like to, more of whatever else you would like to have in your life.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And so my personal story, I guess, is in undergrad, I was always interested in what I really wanted to do was neurology. I was always interested in the brain and how the biology translated into what was going on in our external world. But they didn't really have that, so I ended up with 3 majors because I was interested in all these different areas. But what really fascinated me was the unique things. There would be someone that would have a stroke, and all of a sudden they couldn't see anymore, but they had this vibrational sense of the world around them. So you would say they're blind because their eyes aren't working, but they would still be able to sense the world around them just fine. Or other, autistic children with their amazing ability to recall something, so that was the kind of stuff I was interested in undergrad. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do afterwards, but I had wrestled. I was a wrestler from, maybe 3rd grade all the way through college. So I was competing. I was an athlete. And so I had started going to a chiropractor, very, like 8th grade or something. So I was seeing him and I was talking. He's like, well, what are you going to want to do when you graduate? And I was like, I don't really know. And he's like, well, you should check out chiropractic school. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went and checked it out, and I was like, yeah, this looks good. I mean, they work for themselves. They're really independent, and it was, bodily based, and I was so used to being with my body and getting it to change and working out and stuff. I thought that would be a good fit. So that's how I ended up in chiropractic school. And then what really led me to Access Consciousness was I was looking for other things I could add when I was in chiropractic school, because part of what I was getting frustrated with was a lot of the school isn't on the cutting edge of what's going on, and it's usually, lagging behind. These are the things the curriculum isn't something based on the latest science or the latest things. It's always, 10 years, 20 years, however many years, based on the tradition of the things, which might work. But for me, I was always looking at what else. And so I started taking all these classes on the weekends and stuff, of all these different seminars and things. And one of my expeditions, I stumbled upon Access, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was just amazing to me, and I just knew it was a fit for me. So I started taking those classes more and more while I was going through chiropractic school. So people always ask, well, what was it like to go from chiropractic to Access Consciousness? And to me, it was never like, I was basically taking Access Consciousness classes at the same time and working towards becoming a facilitator as I was working towards becoming a doctor of chiropractic.
Okay, sounds interesting. So kind of there were breadcrumbs all along that were leading you to certain aspects of what you were doing, but then there were other things that were missing that Access Consciousness seems to have provided for you.
Yeah, it was really Gary Douglas, the founder of Access, talks about, is that Access Consciousness is the verbalization of everything that you've always known was true. So, and I found that to be true for me is, there might be things that we know or that we just have a knowing about things, but we, an intuition or a gut feeling, but we don't ever really get to acknowledge that in our daily lives, or it's not something that's talked about or anything. And what I found with Access was it really helped me to develop that and acknowledge it for myself. And really, the tagline of Access Consciousness is empowering people to know that they know. So, and that's what I found what it was for me. It was really empowering me to know that I knew stuff and that it was always about that, which was interesting coming from, chiropractic school and just undergraduate, where it's not necessarily about what you know, it's about what the professor knows or what the curriculum knows, or, and where you are this less than, rather than, empowering you to actually see how you see the world, because each of us see the world in a unique way, and that uniqueness oftentimes isn't fostered and nurtured.
Yes, very true, and it's the tenet on which life coaching is based as well. The course program that I took is a coactive method, and it means that we co-create with a client and help them bring out their best instead of telling them what to do.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I personally love that. It's what drew me to coaching, as opposed to therapy or some other kind of healing professional.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about labels, because that is the topic of the day, and it's a topic that really was fascinating to me. I even gave a contest speech for Toastmasters on labels and how they help me back in life, and so that's why I was drawn to this topic. I think that so many times we have labels that can hold us back from anything. So if you can share with us some good examples of labels that can hold somebody back from love.
Well, I think, just one of the biggest labels could be, I just don't deserve love, or I'm not deserving of this kind of love, or, or just, that's like obviously one thing. And what we're talking about really with labels is these things, I just like it. I just see, I'm very visual, so it's like, hello, my name is, those stickers that you put on, but you have, hello, my name is, I don't deserve love, and then you just, in a way, we're unconsciously putting out this point of view that and we constantly are creating that in our lives, where we have these labels, and then we end up creating it over and over again to validate that label that we have, but we don't even realize we're doing it. I think another one is just how we actually label love itself. Like an example of that was I have a friend and he always uses, his example is one of his ex-wives thought that one rose meant you truly loved her, and a dozen roses meant you didn't. So, we have these labels around what love is to us and how people show us love that doesn't have anything to do with reality. It doesn't have to do with like action or what they're trying to express, but it has to fit into this certain area. Otherwise, if it doesn't match our label, then we completely reject it and don't even allow it to come into our world.
Yeah. So on another side of this is somebody's out of my league, like
yes,
people
that's
who
a great
date,
label.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard this before. I was just talking to a client this morning who said she can't stand when a guy says, you're too good for me, or I'm intimidated by you, right? So
mm-hmm.
it's something. So you're saying this is a construct of your own thoughts. This isn't the truth.
Yeah, I think this is where we don't really acknowledge ourselves and what's actually true for us. We just put this like label on ourselves, and that's the only thing we think is real, when it has nothing to do with reality. It's like, okay, this person's out of my league. Well, what is that based on? Because how they look? Because and especially with labels, what we tend to do is we use this image or this picture of it that has nothing to do with who we are actually, or what's going on underneath. It's just like this, it's the image that we like to put to the world, or the image that we see ourselves in the world as. But it's not actually the whole picture, and it's not like the total picture either. So it's like, you're out of my league. Well, based on what? If the man had, like in this reality, if the man has, like if the woman's really pretty but the man has lots of money, then it's okay. Because what he lacks in looks, he makes up for with cash.
Oh yeah, you can buy love for sure.
Yeah. So it's just very interesting when you actually look at these concepts and everything that we go into, and the other thing is, it's always interesting because if I've learned this, if the woman's talking to you, there is some interest there. So it's like saying things like, "Oh, you're out of my," like you're rejecting them when they're obviously interested. But we do this oftentimes and this is really what we do with labels, is so often we have these labels and someone gives us a compliment or something and it doesn't actually match what we have as a label, and we reject it and we reject them.
Mhm.
And
so we're basically
so if
pushing people away.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And so I think this is one of the challenging things about relationships and love too, is we don't really have we're never really like the introspection that it takes to kind of, and the self-awareness it takes to kind of sometimes take a moment and be like, wait, what did I do this? Like, what did I choose this for? Like, this is someone I'm interested in, and they're actually being interested in me, and I go to, oh, you're too good for me? Like, what? We reject that as having that, but they're actually present with us. They're interested, or they're on a date with you, and you're going to, oh, you're already dismissing it, preparing for the rejection.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know I've often thought that when somebody has said something like that to me, and it's like, I'm here, aren't I? Like, I'm taking my time and my energy, and I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then now that they've said that, you're out of my league, or I'm intimidated. Now I want to go home. I just want to go home.
Yeah.
So we label ourselves based on past experiences, and we have these limiting ways of seeing ourselves, but it's not the whole picture, you say. And so how do we begin to see the whole picture? How do we stop labeling?
Well, one of the things that I would look at is, like we have this label like, okay, you're out of my league, right? Or I'm not deserving of this person and everything. But we have all this context for it. You know what I mean? If you're like, I always like to have people look at the areas that they are confident in, or they actually see themselves as capable. And I'm like, okay, so you see yourself as capable in this, and everyone has some area in their life where they know something about, where they're comfortable, where they're competent. And if you have these areas where you're competent, then you can, and you have confidence. Well, then what is it that you don't have? Like, what is it that makes you think you can't have confidence and competency in in all areas of your life? We have, and so you can kind of start to look at picking apart the labels by seeing, okay, well, I have this idea that I'm not good enough in this area, but in this area, I know I'm good enough. So, but we try to generalize these labels to all areas of our lives when it's not actually true. And so if you can start to identify where you actually have a kind of a conflicting label, that I found that kind of starts to break it apart. The other thing is just actually looking at, okay, like the actions and the choices. Like if you notice yourself saying, oh, I'm not good enough to her, like to someone or to him, or you're out of my league. Well, what is, like, oh my gosh, like what are you actually saying with that? What labels do you actually have of yourself that are making that are creating that for you? Because oftentimes we don't even realize we have this. We just say these things, and then it's often interesting because I like to work with clients, and they say things to me, and we're like, what did you just say? Did you hear what you just said? And they're like, they can't even repeat back to me what they just said.
Yeah.
So it's oftentimes we don't actually listen to the things we're saying out loud, or the things we're saying to ourselves. And so if you actually start listening to yourself and the things you're saying, you can start catching yourselves when you start exposing the labels you have, and then you can start choosing something different to correct it.
So if they want to replace the label with something else, so can you give us an example of like a bait and switch kind of thing?
Well, I think with the access tools, it's not like a lot of all of Access Consciousness is really based in being a question. And it's, the idea of like you can create whatever you desire. So I would look at, okay, so if you're going on a date or you're looking for love, what is it that you really desire to create with the person? Because oftentimes, with these labels in the way, we look at, like, we already have what's going to get created. We've already played out this scenario in our head of, oh, we're going to go out and at some point she's going to realize she's not good enough for me, like I'm not good enough for her or something. And then we start creating that. But it's like, what if you could actually ask? And so all this stuff is around asking questions of, so what is it that you would like to create? It's like, what would it take for this date to go better than I expected? Or what would it take for this person to be interested in me? Or what would it take for me to like, I'm just looking at what I would like to, like, I would look at, okay, so what would I like to create with this person? Or what am I interested in creating with this person? And how would I actually like that to go on? Because so oftentimes we focus on the rejection that's coming rather than actually what would we like to create, If you'd like to create a relationship with a person, well, then find out what is your idea of relationship? How does that actually work? And what is their idea of relationship, and how does that actually work? So oftentimes we don't even really, we have these labels and these ideas of how relationships should be, and then we get into relationship or we don't get into relationship with people, but there's oftentimes no clarity in any of it.
Yeah. So how, so as we have these great questions about defining relationship, about what you would like to create.
Yeah.
And that's all great if your label is, I will be rejected, I'm not lovable, all those kinds of things. But in my demographic and the people who come to me generally have a different label, which is there are no good men.
There are no good men.
Right. There are no good men. Most men in my age want to date much younger women. There's a lot of beliefs about that. So if they're coming in thinking, not, I hope he likes me and I hope that he picks me and I'm not worthy, it's more, I am worthy and I can't find them. So what would you suggest to do?
So I think the great tool is, oftentimes we look at, especially it tends to be with more females, but men do this too, obviously. But in dating, most of the time, the men need to choose the woman, or they need to approach the woman and be the kind of aggressive one, and be chosen. Like the women would like to be chosen. They would like the man to approach them and say, hey, would you like to go on a date? Or, even once you're on the date, the man gets the lead. And we have this idea of being the choosing one rather than the chosen one.
Right.
So what if it was like, and that doesn't mean, we could, so it's like with these women that are saying, well, there's no good men, or all the good men will go to younger people and all of these things. Well, if you were being the choosing one in this scenario, what would you choose? Because, and I really like that, because there's oftentimes we have this idea we really want something because we think we can't have it, which has nothing to do with what we actually want either. So you can, I would look at, okay, so if I was really looking at choosing what works for me, what kind of man would I like to choose?
Right, but so they're going in with that, and they're saying, but all the men I keep meeting they're lazy, they're boring, they need therapy.
Okay. Yes. So and this
then
is,
what?
So, yes. So what would it take to actually have a man show up that was interested in you and was interesting to you? Because if we're talking about labels, if you keep saying there are no good men, right? Then all you're seeing is all the no good men. Your focus, everything you're saying is about how there's no good men, and you start reinforcing that label and proving that to yourself. And what is this idea of a good man? Do they actually have an idea of what they would like in a man, or do they? Oftentimes we have this laundry list of what I do not like. We're very clear on that, but we don't actually have the opposite list of, okay, what is it that I'm really looking for?
Yeah.
And that's and also there's the other time where people have what they're looking for, but they don't have what they're not looking for. And I think when you're looking for a relationship, one of the tools we that I give people is, okay, make a list of everything you would like and make a list of everything you wouldn't like. And then as you start going on dates and you notice someone showing up that's different or that is more the same, I talk to them each time. I'm like, okay, so was there anything different? Did you know, where did you find out more things that you would like or that you wouldn't like? And usually after a couple times of that, people start getting really clear on, okay, there's certain things that I didn't realize that were important. I know for myself, I was just realizing, in the press release we did for this, I talk about how I gave myself the label that I wasn't creative. I didn't think I was creative because I couldn't paint, I couldn't draw, I couldn't sing or dance. Those were creative things. And I couldn't do those, so obviously I wasn't creative. And what started changing for me with Access is I started realizing, oh, wait, people would say I'm so creative. And I'm like, what are you talking about? No. I don't sing, I don't dance. Because I had labeled singing, dancing equals creative. What I'm doing, not creative. But I was creating a business. I was creating promotion stuff for the business. I was creating connections with people. I was all of these. I'm very creative with words and like word plays and stuff like that. All of that is actual creativity. What I was looking from this point of view of that. But I also realized recently, I was like, oh, like going on a date and just the people I like to be around, whether it's is I like creative people. I like people that are like, that have that creative energy that are able to keep up. If you're just like, if you don't have a sense of fun and play and like creativity, it's not interesting to me. But I never actually acknowledge that or ask for it. So, when I get to people and I'm like, oh, this should work, like this date should be fun. They look great, but I'm like, what's missing here? Well, I didn't realize that, how important like the creative aspect and that creativity was, and like having a sense of curiosity and wonder was to me.
Yeah, that's a great reframe of creativity
Mm-hmm.
or an expansion. You're speaking to a very creative person, so I identified as creative my whole life because I was an artist and I was a singer and I was a dancer and I did all the creative arts
Yes.
kinds of things. And people say to me, so are you still doing your art? And I say, no, now that I've been a coach for the last 11, 12 years, I have a different form of creativity, and it has to do with course creation, giving speeches, using words. It's more like what you're talking about, but I look at that as just another form of creativity. So I totally hear you on that.
And I totally see that it is creative now, but like, I didn't see it as before, which is, that's one of the things we talk about with like dating and everything is, if you're interested in a person but they don't really see it themselves, you can't give it to them. You can't make them bypass their label or get around their label. You can only kind of just poke at it a little bit, but you can't really get them to change it. It's for them to change when they would like to change it, if they would.
Yeah. A lot of people just believe this is it. This is the way it is, and I was born this way. I can't help it. That's a big trigger for me when people say it just has to be this way. And because, like you, I believe that we have the power to shift our beliefs and our thoughts and our lives.
Yeah, and it's like, going back to the example of, well, there aren't any good men. Well, that belief then, that thing, you just start reinforcing that and constantly creating that, and you only see that in the world because that's your belief. So what I would start to do with people that have that belief is I would be like, okay, well, do you actually see, so with that belief, then there's no men you're actually interested in dating out there in the world. That's what they're saying with that, because there's no man that's good enough for you.
Yeah. Somebody posted in my Facebook group recently, and just for everybody to know, I forgot to mention that I have a Facebook group, a free group called Your Last First Date, and I invite everybody who's listening who's a woman over 40 to join for a positive, wonderful group. But one of my monitors posted that she used to look for the negatives, like she just spent her whole time looking for what was wrong until she realized that she was sabotaging the whole dating process. And the last man that she's been dating and now has been with for 2 years, I think, and they're probably going to end up married, she said, I realized I wasn't finding anything wrong with him, but that I had been always looking, and I think we do that, like you said before. We look for the bad. We look for how somebody's going to trip up, how they're going to reinforce the label that we have given.
Yeah, and I mean, as I've been on both sides of this too, where I'm like looking for someone to trip up, or I notice someone's looking for me to trip up, and it's not a comfortable feeling when you're like trying to be present with someone and they just have this constant sense of, okay, they're searching for a reason or something to reject you, which isn't, that's not being present. That's not having a sense of connection with them. It's just, you're like, I'm like being cross-examined right now.
Yeah.
So I think that's, so the other thing, the other tool is you could actually start looking at, okay, what you're within dating and everything is, okay, so what are you grateful about this person? What are you grateful for with this person? And because when you go to gratitude, there is no judgment.
Yeah.
And so you can be grateful for anything. You can just be grateful that the person's, not a nice person. Well, I'm grateful for that because you showed that to me, and that makes it really clear that I'm not interested in you. Or you can be grateful that they're really creative for their creativity because it inspires you. Or you could, but you tend to start actually looking at more of what's available, and these positive aspects that we tend to dismiss or we don't acknowledge.
Yeah, very good. I like that. And I think that often we will find out things about a person early on where sometimes it's some pretty bad things, with the way a person behaves on a first date or a first phone call. And I look at that with gratitude also. Like, thank you for not having me find that out 6 months from now. Like, I'm so glad I did not waste energy on that person. But it also gives you clarity each time you go on a date and you really look at what worked, what didn't work for you, but also to look at yourself, like how am I self-sabotaging? And most of the clients that I work with, we look at these patterns first. What are the patterns that didn't work before, and how have you sometimes maybe pushed away the right person because you were looking for something that wasn't good for you? So we sometimes subconsciously believe, like, if we're not worthy, or, we're turned off by emotionally healthy people because we're so used to dysfunction from our family of origin. There's a lot of patterns that we bring to the table.
Yeah.
So
I think I mean, this this is not like a a topic that can be summed up quickly or easily. And it's always interesting because what I found with working with clients and in my own life is it's never really, with everything that's showing up for you in with relationships and dating, it's never really for I would say almost 75%, 80%. It's never about that other person a lot of the times. What's not, like, there's so much of it that is actually a way of showing you and giving you more clarity around what's going on in your kind of internal world and how you see the world, and showing you these kind of patterns as you were talking about. Because when you're actually aware of it and stuff, and you have things that are working, like, it's a non-issue in the first place. It's not anything they're doing.
Yeah, and you can do something about that. You can't do something about a lot of the other aspects of dating, but you can definitely do something about your own self-discovery. So, Andrew, as we come to an end, what advice would you give people who want to go on their last first date? Some last final words of wisdom.
Oh, wow, sum it up quickly. I would just, I think the best advice is to actually, to use each date, if you're looking to go on your last first date, well, what would it be like if this was your last first date? What would you be looking for? What would you not be looking for? And really get clear on the things you would like to have and the things you would not like to have, because so often we don't truly have the clarity. And it might be a little bit difficult, but I think it's in the end it's way worth the reward, just in the sense of self-discovery, but also, you actually start becoming clear on who and what you would like to have in your life. Yeah.
Good advice. So, Andrew, if you can let our audience know how they can find out more about you, that would be great.
Yes, you can visit my website, and that has links to all my social media and stuff like that. It's andrewgardella.com. So, and my last name is Gardella.
Got it, and I'll put that in the show notes as well, so people can connect to you and learn more. So, thank you so much for coming on the show today, for sharing some really thoughtful questions that people can ask themselves to gain more clarity and to really bust some of those labels that we have been holding on to for a long time.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, everybody, for listening. Don't forget about my Facebook group, Your Last First Date. Just hop on Facebook and go into groups, and you'll find us. And we would love to have you. And if you love our show, please, please, please share it and rate and review us wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Spreaker, wherever. We are everywhere. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you go on your last first date very soon.